It's good to connect with you, to talk with you again. And I have a message I want to give now, and I'm actually talking about some information that came to me through doing ritual with Santa Muerte. So this is involved with Santa Muerte, but it's involved also with symbolisms and understanding symbolisms, right? So first, please look up Macabre and the Chariot of God. And this is biblical symbolism. So you can look up the macabre is also the chariot of God in the Bible. But anyway, on from that, remember that, but on from that, going to symbolism. One of the symbolisms of Santa Muerte, of course, is the bare bone, skeletal face, right? And you've got the scythe, and you've got the cape, the black cape. But what you've also got traditionally is the rose, right? The rose as a symbol of Santa Muerte. And of course, roses are used for different spiritual symbolism. But here I'm saying Santa Muerte rose representing Santa Muerte. So here's the message that came through that I'm sharing with you. It is on symbolism of the earth versus symbolism of the spirit. And sometimes our understanding is blocked, sometimes totally blocked by the symbolism of earth instead of the symbolism of the spirit. All right, so with Santa Muerte, to people who don't know or haven't investigated, this representation of death is scary. What are you doing with death? Why do you have skeletons? What are you talking about? These are demonic images. This is awful. This is scary. But here's the thing. When you uncover the spiritual symbolism and get off of the earthly symbolism, which we sometimes can get locked into, the meaning of the skull. Here's one meaning given, right, that I was shown. And think about this. The skull of Santissima Muerte. There is no face. There is no race in the skull itself. There is no earthly anything in the skull itself. It is a plain skull of which each and every one of us has a skull inside of us, our head. We have a whole skeleton that is white, that is bony, right? And the head, the part of the head now, is a skeleton underneath that every single human being has, by which we walk, by which we move. The skeleton. That is the significance, this universal significance of everybody having a skeletal figure. Everybody at some point comes down to a skeletal figure that is no longer operating inside of flesh, but is now moved on to spirit. And if you think about it, this Santa Muerte imagery of the skull is not frightening unless we are frightened of our own magnificent skeleton that we walk with every day. Glory, right? Amazing the way that works and how we've been created. These are spiritual symbolisms so that you take your, stretch your mind further, of which we all have the ability to do. And so most of this knowledge is it's in our DNA, right? So we focus on now, what are the spiritual meanings? And never mind about actual death itself. What are the spiritual meanings of skeleton? Spiritual meaning of death. Because spiritual meaning of death is not physical death. Spiritual meaning of death, right, as an example, is growth, growing, becoming better spiritually, physically, improving, learning new things, and experiencing life and experiencing something that teaches you. Right? Now, Santa Muerte is a force, a great force, And she teaches you when you work with her. She teaches you all these kinds of things. Right? Now let's look at the Bible for a minute. Right? When in the Bible, we have a lot of spiritual symbolism that people take literally. For instance, this whole idea of gender. And when I'm talking about gender, I'm not talking about homosexuality. I'm not talking about anything like that connected with the worldly stuff that's going on with that. I'm talking about this whole idea, angels. Angels do not have a gender because they are spirit, right? So they are not pinned down and tagged into this whole idea of gender. They don't have a gender. And if you look at this whole idea of God in the Bible, God himself, as it is shown, and I say himself because that's how he's presented, but just because God is presented as himself does not mean that God himself is not a spirit. Is a spirit we're talking about, right? So there's spiritual things versus actual earthly things that can get us all confused and caught up in only the physical plane. Back to the skeleton. Every one of us. Here's the message. Every single one of us is walking with a skeleton inside under the skin. It is one of the most magnificent thoughts, ideas, and truths that we could ever imagine. It makes us, by our humanity, the same. The skeletal figure, the skeleton, the skull, we all have that. And we all, right? Another message from Santa Muerte, we all will go to the grave. Every last one of us, right? No one has conquered death. Not even the greatest magicians of all time has conquered death, right? So we go to that, right? And then we move on to another spiritual life, right? Because the spirit does not die. And this is another message of Santa Muerte, or the deities. The spirit doesn't die, and death symbolisms are nothing to be afraid of. Look beyond just the earthly understanding. Namaste.